There are many data storage formats out there to store data. We can mention CSV, Excel, JSON, XML, SQL. Now, SQL is considered to be one of the best ways to store data. So in this section, we're going to work on retrieving and inserting and changing data from SQL databases via Python. For this particular lecture, we're going to work on retrieving data, so getting the data from an SQL database and printing them out with Python, so we access those data with Python. Now, there are different SQL databases out there. You have Oracle, you have MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQLite. These are all similar, so if you learn one, you basically know the other. There are small differences how to access the data, but all you need to learn is one of them. So the one we're going to work on is SQLite. This is how this is going to work. I will give you a database file, the one I have in here, uploaded in my repo. You can download this from the lecture resources and place it in your project directory. If I click this, we're not going to see anything because this is not a text file, so it's a binary file and you need a specific program to read it. So you either read it with Python or with another program. Before we read it with Python, let's read it with another third-party program. I would suggest you this web app, inloop.github.io/SQLite-viewer, or just Google this, SQLite viewer, and then all you need to do is upload the database.db file that you got from the lecture resources, and you should see the data that this database file has. A database can have 0 or more tables. This database here has one table. We can see it in the drop-down list here. The table name is IPs, and this table has 1, 2, 3 fields or columns, in other words, and we have 9 rows. So these are IP data, the IP address, the domain of the IP, and the ASN number, which is an identifier for these IPs. Now, just like we opened this database file in this program, we can do the same in Python. So the difference is that we don't use a graphical user interface to drag and drop it, but we use Python code. And we need a library for that, SQLite 3. It's a standard Python library, so it doesn't need to be installed. Now, with databases, you have to establish a connection. So for that, you need to say SQLite3.connect. That is the method which gets as input the database path, database.db. So that file goes there, and then once you establish a connection, so you have that variable, then you create what is referred to as a cursor object. That is basically an object which is going to look at the rows and give you data depending on what you want. So you point to that connection object and then to cursor to create that cursor variable. So this will stay here. Basically, you establish a connection and create cursor. Then we're done with that. Next, all we need to do is run SQL queries. What is an SQL query? An SQL query is SQL language. In fact, SQL means structured query language. So it is a language like this one in here. This is SQL. So when we drag and dropped this file in this app, this query was executed, this SQL language was executed. And what that did is it selected all the rows of the IPs table. And there's also this limit here, so it limits up to 30 rows. So if this table had 80 rows, we would only see 30 of them. If you wanted to see all the rows, you can delete that and just say execute. Again, we would get the same output because this table has only 9 rows, so that didn't affect the results. But you can do other stuff such as order by ASN. If you execute that, you'll see that the order of the rows will change. So we displayed every row ordered by ASN. So you have this 101 here, 1 to 5, and so on. The ASN increases. So this is what this does. Select everything from table IPs and order it by ASN. Now, we copy that, we go back to Python and get ready to execute SQL, which goes like this. You point to the cursor object that execute, and then here goes in quotes, in double quotes. It's good to use double quotes because you might have some single quotes names in the SQL, so use double quotes for that. In there goes the query. Once you do that, you need to do one more thing. You need to print cur fetch all. That is a method, so I'm calling that method. And run. And that's the output. So the output is a list of tuples. The list starts in here and it ends in here. So it's one list, but multiple tuples. Each tuple represents a row. So that is the first IP address with its domain and its ASN, and then the second row with its IP address with the domain and ASN, and they are also ordered by the ASN, as you can see the number in here. So that's how you retrieve data with Python. That's the syntax. Now it's all a matter of learning the SQL language, which is pretty simple. And I'm going to teach you SQL now in this lecture. So that was how to execute SQL, and more specifically, this was how to get all rows and all columns by order. How do we get certain columns only? So let's say we don't want the domain, we only want the IP and the ASN. To do that, let's copy that, paste it in here. Let's insert a comment, get all rows and certain columns. Instead of everything here, instead of the asterisk, you would place address. So address is the name of that column, and ASN, the name of that other column, comma, a space, and ASN, and execute. And here we go. So here is where the first output ends. So that's the first output up there from this print function, and that is the second output. So that is the address and the ASN. No domain this time. Let's do some more SQL. How to apply conditions. So, for example, you want only the rows of the table which have an ASN less than 300. So basically, we want to extract that portion only, those data. To do that, you need to use a where statement, which goes like this. So get all rows where ASN is less than 300. To do that, you say select everything or certain columns, whatever you want. Let's say everything, so all the columns. From my piece, that's the table name. And then we say where ASN is smaller than 300. Yep, execute. And that's the output. So we get 1 to 5 and then 101. They are not ordered this time because we remove the order by statement. 144 and 198. So there are no rows with ASN greater than 300. Similarly, you can apply a condition to get, for example, where ASN is 144, so a specific value. That would be ASN equal to 144. Run, and that's the output. That's only one row. Be aware though that this row is still a tuple inside a list. So the output is always a list of at least one tuple or maybe 0 tuples sometimes when the SQL doesn't show any results. As in the case, for example, if this is a number that doesn't exist and you run it, you get an empty list. So what's more? Well, you can have multiple conditions. For example, let me copy that, paste it in here, and we want this time where ASN is less than 300, but also we want another condition which we can add with the AND operator. And domain, like single quotes, so open single quotes, close single quotes, and in between we say %SA. Let's see what this will give us. So that's the output of that last print function. What we got is all the rows which have an ASN of greater than 300, but also they have the word SA at the end. So you see at the end of the domain, SA in here and SA for this second row. Sorry, so this is the output of that print function. So we have two rows actually, that was from the previous print function. So we have SA for that and SA for that. So what this does, this part in here and here, is that the domain has everything before you see the percentage operator. The percentage symbol here means every character followed by SA. So that's the pattern here. We have multiple characters and then at the end we have SA. So that's how you apply two conditions, and you can add more, of course, by adding more AND operators followed by conditions. Now there's something you should know about the fetch all method in here. See what happens if you assign a variable to this method like that, and then you print out the variable, and then you create another variable, let's say results2, and you print out results2. You'd probably expect to get the results 2 times, but see what happens. So what you get is the results in here from the results1 variable, but then you get an empty list. That is because this method should only be executed once in the code for a certain SQL query. So once you run the SQL query and you execute that method once, then the list is exhausted because you used it once in here, so you cannot use it again because you'll get an empty list. So for the second print function, you'll get this empty list. That's something to keep in mind, and of course you can always iterate over the results. So for results or for row in results, print row, and you will see this output. So this time we don't get a list because we are iterating over that list. So we see the tuples directly. So if you want to do something for each tuple, that is an option. What you can do, you can iterate over those tuples. And that's about this video. This code should be enough to get you started with SQL. So now you know how to query data from SQL databases. I'll talk to you in the next video.